Thanks, Harrison, and welcome again to all of you for Day 2 of RECON 20.
And here we are with the U.S. Escape Room Industry Report for 2020. Let's go.
The story that I want to tell you, called The Boy and the Zen Master, goes something like this. Boy's having his birthday, and his parents get him a horse. And everyone in the village says, "Isn't that great?" And the Zen Master says, "We'll see." The boy is off riding his horse. The horse bucks, and the boy falls off and breaks his leg. He's stuck at home in a lot of pain as he convalesces, and everyone in the village says, "Isn't that horrible?" And the Zen Master says, "We'll see." The village has to go off to war. And all the boys and men have to go off and fight and support the cause. The boy is stuck at home with a broken leg. The people of the village say, "Isn't that great?" And the Zen Master says, "We'll see." It's really difficult to judge exactly what's going on when you're in the middle of something. And that's really the message that I want you to have in mind as we go through the data that we're going to go through today. So we're going to share some things that surprise you, some in good ways, some in some not so good ways. All that I can tell you going into it is, we'll see.
What even is an escape room? Let's go back in time. What was an escape room? When they first started in the US, they looked something like this. Granted, this photo is taken after the room was played. But this is Scrap's mysterious room, the first escape room to open in the United States. And it was an office-y type room with secondhand furniture and lots of puzzles on papers shoved in different parts of the room and hidden in different ways and very puzzly, very challenging. But it was a puzzle game in a room that looked like this. And since then, we've come really far. Today, escape rooms could be this, the lost treasure from the room in Berlin, an adventure with magnificent set design and outstanding puzzles. Or this. If you watched the bloggers panel, you may recognize this room. This is the Dome, and it is from Escape Room Netherlands in Bunschoten in the Netherlands outside of Amsterdam. And this is a technological marvel. It surprises you at every change as it goes through, and it has one of the most beautiful puzzles I've ever seen. Or this. This is Strange Bird Immersive, who spoke yesterday at RECON and who have created The Man from Beyond, which combines immersive theater with escape room gameplay to tell a story, and an emotional one. So there's a lot of variety in escape rooms. This variety was one of the key themes that we were watching in 2019. And this was the trajectory that we were all on when we announced that we were going to host RECON in Boston.
And then we got 2020'd. Everything that we thought we were producing as a community, whether it was an event or it was the games themselves, the nature of this whole industry changed over the course of a few weeks. And now we have a very different definition of escape room. This is Improbable Escape's Seven Dwarves, which you used to be able to play in real life. Actually, they've reopened. You can, if you can get there. We can't cross the border. This game is beautiful, and we played it with a camera strapped to a game master, telling them what to do. That's an escape game in 2020. You can play cut and paste and online games like CU Adventures Through Time and Space. Their game, The Lost Temple, is exactly that. I really enjoyed this. It's really different. I was never imagining anything like this, but I had a great time with it. And you can catch Anne from CU Adventures on the panel in a little while. And then you have The Truth About Edith, which is not a game that existed before quarantine. It isn't really truly an escape room, but it is one that was made deliberately for the internet. It involves camera work. It involves a whole bunch of different websites. It's puzzly. It tells a story. It's fun. I really, truly enjoyed this and the model that they dreamt up. This is an escape room in 2020. The definition that Room Escape Artist was operating with going into 2020 for escape room was a game where a group of participants collaboratively discovered and solved puzzles, tasks, and challenges that required no outside knowledge at a physical venue in order to accomplish a goal within a set amount of time. And this definition doesn't really work for the world that we live in anymore. At the bare minimum, we've crossed off the bottom 2 points here. Physical venue isn't really required, and this set time limit, that's kind of gone too in a lot of cases. Not necessarily, but really the core message here is that things have gotten really fuzzy. And that's okay. This really allows the industry to get more creative with the format. In a lot of ways, there are some blessings here, because escape rooms have long struggled with the high cost of customer acquisition and the low turnout of new product. The business never really scaled. That was part of the appeal, and as a player, I think that is a lot of what I love about it. But I also love that it is now possible for escape room companies to put out scalable solutions that allow players to play on their own time in their own way. And that's okay. I think that there's a market for it, and I think that this is a good area to explore.
Now we're going to take a look at the data for the US Escape Room Industry Report. And the report is going to be published shortly after this talk. So our data is data that we've been collecting since 2014 on the US escape room industry. And if you told me when I started collecting data in 2014 that this was going to be used, live streamed globally about this industry, I would have laughed at you. That wasn't what we were trying to do. We were just trying to find escape rooms that we could go play because we loved playing them. This data is for the US. I don't have the data for all over the world. This is a global event, and there are many other people out there who do have data for lots of other places, who can tell you interesting things about escape rooms in other parts of the world. But we're going to look at the data that I have for the US. And before we do that, a huge thank you to Melissa from Connecticut, who has done so much work over the years and dedicated so much of her time to keeping this data up to date, to keeping it accurate, and making it available for us to pull this report. A caveat before we go any further, we count escape room facilities, not companies. So these are places in the United States where you can go play an escape room. There may be one game to play there, or there may be multiple games to play there. And a company may own 2 facilities in different states, or maybe just down the street from each other. Different buildings, different facilities. That's what we're counting. A caveat, particularly for 2020, is that when we look at closure data, we're looking at permanent closures. There have been many, many temporary closures over the course of the year, and we don't know right now how many of those will reopen and how many may become permanent closures. But for the purposes of our industry report, we are not counting businesses that are temporarily closed. We are counting closures where we have been able to confirm that the business did in fact close permanently. In 2014, when we first built our escape room directory, there were about 24 escape room facilities in the United States. And then that grew exponentially. There were 900 in 2016, 1,850 in 2017, we climbed to 2,300 in 2018, and then climbed just a little bit more to 2,350 in 2019. In 2020, we've dropped to 2,250 escape room facilities in the United States. And this is a 4.3% decrease in facilities from last year at this time. This is actually lower than our expected closure rate. We had that huge growth in 2016, 2017, 2018, and we had expected companies to start closing because that is the nature of businesses, and it's something that we talked about last year at this time. And what we've seen so far is that that closure rate has not been what we'd expected. Many of these businesses are still operating, so we'll see. We also looked at statistics about small businesses in general from the U.S. Bureau of Labor, and these apply to all small businesses across industries. So that includes restaurants and all sorts of other types of businesses. And for businesses overall, about 20% fail within the first year. And after 5 years, roughly 50% have failed. At 10 years, approximately 2 in every 3 businesses have closed. And that's not true for escape rooms thus far. We've seen 850 escape room businesses close over the course of the years since 2014 that we've been tracking this data. That's not this many. Escape room businesses in general are doing better than businesses overall at continuing to operate. We also looked at data for U.S. government loans to escape room businesses, and that data is hard to find. 72% of escape rooms are single facility businesses. They're only operating the one facility. They're really small. ProPublica released data for businesses that have received more than $150,000 from the government. And we combed through that data and we were able to locate 13 escape room businesses. And this is not a lot compared to the more than 2,200 escape room businesses in the US today. These businesses that we were able to find, almost all have more than 5 locations. These are the exception and not the norm. And the other ones were unusual in other ways. Bodeborg in Boston, which is not your typical escape room, and also Escape the Netherworld, which is part of a larger business, a haunted house business. So most escape rooms received less from the government, and that means it's really hard to track how they're doing and how they're going to do in the future.
All of that brings us to where we're going. Escape rooms have largely positioned themselves as a safer entertainment option, and with good reason. I think it is true. I think most people who look at the facts here will agree that it is true. Let's take a look at that. This is our moment because escape rooms are inherently small group activities that are private. At least they are now, whether you wanted it or not. That's the way it's going to be. They are low throughput. They don't require tons and tons of people to go through the business. And the margins per person are good enough, especially relative to a lot of other forms of entertainment that frequently require very large numbers of people at very low margins. So escape rooms from a business standpoint may not be set up to thrive right now, but are certainly set up to endure right now. And frankly, enduring 2020 is pretty much the goal. So we're going to take a look at some booking trends in the United States. We were, over the course of 2018 and 2019, quietly conducting our own study of booking trends within the escape room world, or at least within the United States. We have not published all of this, although a lot of it is going to end up in our industry report this year. But one of the things that we had found was that 40% of companies in the United States already had the capacity or were fully private booking based companies. So I know that there is, especially for the international folks, there has always been a trend in the United States that doesn't really persist in most of the rest of the world towards public bookings. But that had been moving towards private in the US long before the crisis. We haven't had a chance to play an escape room since early March, and we're hoping to get back to playing at some point in the not that distant future. When we do, there's stuff that I personally am going to be looking for in the companies that we choose to play versus the ones that we don't. Now, this is just me, David Spira, fan of escape rooms and guy who had viral pneumonia as a child and doesn't want to have something worse than that. I'm looking for companies to have clearly stated and enforced policies. I want them on your website. I want to know exactly what you're doing and how you're going about doing it. I don't want to have any overlaps with teams. I never want to bump into another human being. I need contactless check-in. That's for me and for your staff. I'm hoping that you'll be cleaning your rooms after every single use. This is kind of on the honor system because I'm never going to be able to see you do the cleaning, but I think it matters. I'm going to really be looking for hygienic interaction design. What I mean by that are interactions that don't require me to blow on things or breathe on or breathe in things. Things that require me to hold objects up to my eyes, particularly microscopes or telescopes or things of that nature. Those interactions are just going to have to change, at least until we can go back to normal, hopefully. And really, one of the biggest things for me is masks from entry to exit. Not a political thing. This is just me not wanting to get sick. This is what I'm looking for. And I'm going to be looking at your post-game photos, on your social media. And if I see maskless people, that's fine. It's your business. I'm not telling you how to do it, but I am telling you I'm not going to go. Moving on to some general business advice. And all of the ideas that we're touching on here are going to be explored in much more depth during the owner panel in a little while. I strongly encourage you to check it out. First of all, cash on hand really is the best way to endure a moment like this. Now, I say that knowing full well that if you do not have cash on hand right now, it is a lot more challenging to get it in the middle of a crisis. But as for those who are thinking about long-term crisis planning, having many months of operating expenses in the bank is invaluable. Cultivating the right team, having the right people that will be there to help you pivot your business, to make the adjustments that you need, to help you endure or even thrive at a time like this. This is the kind of thing that you cannot beat. It's just so critical. And it's one of the big differentiators between companies that are thriving or enduring and the companies that are struggling. Knowing your market. I know that it's not easy for everyone to just fly to the Netherlands and play the Dome and see some of the finest escape rooms in the world. But right now, with the pivot to digital, there are so many games that are entirely online. I'm not saying you have to go play all of them. In fact, I wouldn't encourage you to do so. But identify the ones that are changing the market. They're changing the nature of what's being done here, and make sure you've played them. There really is no excuse at this point. Diversify within your niche. It doesn't make sense to go and open up a hot dog stand if you're an escape room, but it does make sense to explore other forms of immersive storytelling and immersive puzzling. And there are a lot of different ways to do that now. We have so many new models. Explore them, figure out what's right for you and your business, and work on that. But mostly, create quality products. And I'm going to say this because it's really important. Do it in a way that doesn't make you overinvest. One of the things that we've noticed this year is that it's not just the bad companies that have closed. There are good ones that have closed or are in danger of closing as well. And a lot of that has to do with really heavy, aggressive investment, assuming that there was going to be, players who could show up this year at the rate that they were in past years. So again, investing smart in your games is critical. And I'm going to offer you a framework for how to do that. I've been working on this framework for a few years now, and I've been talking about it in different forums over the last year. It's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is triangular shaped model where the lower an idea is down that triangle, the more foundational it is. You need that before you can effectively move to the next level. So we're going to start at the bottom. And it's in a place that really surprises a lot of folks. And I think it is customer service, is your bedrock foundation for your escape room company. And a lot of that stems from the realization as a player that good game mastering, good treatment can elevate a game that was fine to make it feel like it was something a lot more special. And at the same time, we have played games that really, I think, were quite wonderful, but didn't feel it because the service was so miserable. As customers, we felt so deeply unappreciated or in the way that it tainted what would have otherwise been a delightful game. Your customer service colors in the experience for your players because this is an experiential business and the way you're being treated matters a lot. Next up, we have gameplay. Now, in the past, we talked about this exclusively as puzzles, and a few years ago, we shifted to the concept of gameplay as escape rooms brought in more and more approaches to play. Regardless of how you're going about it, gameplay is the fundamental product. You have made a game, so the way that it works is the next step. Beyond that, you have set design, or whatever the environment that people are playing in. If it's digital, that's fine. You need the right environment to sell your fiction, to sell the world to your customers. This is critical, especially because escape rooms are generally targeted at adults, and adults are not fantastic at imagining things as a general rule. Next up, we have story. Now, this is the level that I personally believe escape rooms should be striving for in general. This is where I think the greatness truly happens, is when you have everything from the ground up to this point. Anything beyond it is gravy. Story is so important because as human beings, we love stories. Historically, we cannot get enough of them. From the time that people were sitting around campfires telling them, to the writing of words, to theater, to music, to video games, you name it. Once humanity has adopted a form of storytelling, we do not get rid of it. We continue to iterate on it, we adapt it, we twist it and do all sorts of different things with it, but we don't get rid of our forms of storytelling. And that is why escape rooms really need to hit this mark, because that's where the soul is. That's where the humanity is, and that's what people want. The reason why story is above set design here is because it is so difficult to sell a story if the environment doesn't match it. And that is so critical. And that's why we made the controversial decision to put story in this position. Finally, we have cohesion. This is where everything that the business is doing is part of one cohesive whole. The website, the lobby, the individual games, the game masters, absolutely everything in the facility is part of one cohesive world. It's magical when it happens. This is not a necessary step. It's just really cool when it happens. The thesis of RECON 20 is adapt, whether you want to or not. We've done it when we pivoted from creating an in-person event to a digital one, when we basically pushed off almost all of the speakers that we had planned and replaced them with new ones that made more sense for the time and conditions we're in. And all along as we were adapting, I kept listening to music because I love music. And I kept thinking about a particular musician, a guy named Django Reinhardt. He was a jazz guitarist whose abode was set on fire in an accident, and while saving himself and his wife, he suffered brutal third-degree burns that mangled his third and fourth fingers on his fretting hand. And as he was recovering, the doctors told him he'll never play the guitar again. And Django, with 2 functional fingers, completely redefined jazz guitar. He played things that were so intricate and so mind-blowing that even today, guitarists really struggle to learn how to play the stuff that he produced. He redefined his instrument. He took a tragedy and figured out how to make it work for him. And decades later, a guy named Tony Iommi was working in a factory and cut off the tips of 2 of his fingers. This guy was a guitarist, and that was really what he was striving for in life. And as he was recovering, reflecting on how his career was going to be lost, the foreman from the factory that he worked at brought him a record and said, "Tony, I need you to listen to this." And he said, "I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to listen to anything about the guitar." And he said, "No, you have to." And he put it on. And as Tony was listening, he said, "It's really, really good." And the foreman said the guy only had 2 fingers. Tony Iommi went on to join Black Sabbath and effectively is one of the creators of the entire genre of metal. He redefined how the guitar is played with 2 full fingers. Decades later, a guy named Rob was looking at his closed escape room business and decided to strap on a camera and take his Arduinos and hook as many of them up as he could to the internet and live stream his games to people over the internet. And so many other people did things like this and completely redefined the way that we think of escape rooms. And that's the message here. We need to adapt. And we can adapt. And we can make wonderful and cool and fun things. They may not be the thing that you were planning on, but they're things that can be produced and that will change the nature of what we're doing. And we can do it as a community. And that is what I love so much about the escape room world, is that it is a community, that people are sharing knowledge, that they're learning from one another, and creating this whole new medium that didn't exist a little over a decade ago, and has changed my life and your life and so many lives. It's just so cool. I'm not willing to let that go, and I really hope that you aren't either.
Community was always supposed to be a part of RECON, and when we had to adapt, it mattered a lot to us that community was still there. And if you're watching this talk, you're watching just one part of RECON. We also have the RECON Discord, where people are meeting each other and having conversations, where we've built that serendipity we hope that you can find at a live event in person over the internet. Because you are our community and you are important to us, and we wanted to be all together in some way for RECON. And if you are in the RECON Discord, we're asking for your help for future projects. The data that you've seen in the US Industry Report is all either publicly available data or data that we have collected from publicly available data out on the internet. And in the future, we would like to dig more into our industry, and we're asking for your help. If you're okay with sharing some data about your business with us to be anonymized for future studies of this industry. If you're willing, and you don't have to be in the US, you can be from all over the world, then in Discord, go to the Industry Report channel. There's a form pinned at the top there. It'll take you 1 minute to fill out, to give us your name and email, just to say, "I'm interested, I want to be a part of future studies." And we'll reach out to you when we start collecting other data points so that we can all together as a community learn more about this industry. This is not the event that we were expecting to produce this year.
We really thought that we were going to be in Boston with all of you in person, interacting, getting to know one another, exploring all these different ideas, playing games together, but that's just not the world that we're living in.
And we're really glad that we got to be here all together in a different way.
But ultimately, there is no way for anyone to predict the future. That was clear when we announced that we were going to be in Boston last November. And what I really want to make clear to everyone is that we can share data, we can gather data, and we will do all the things that we can to do this, but we cannot predict the future. And anyone who does tell you that they can or pretends like they're knowing more, they're either making it up or they're trying to sell you something. All that we can really tell you is that we'll be here to support, and we'll see.
Thank you for listening and watching our industry report. And if you appreciated what you saw here, know that the content is going to be published on Room Escape Artist very shortly in the written report form. Please subscribe to Room Escape Artist. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can subscribe to daily emails. We publish daily about this industry. And we really appreciate all of your support. If you're enjoying RECON and if you like this talk, we really do hope that you'll support us on Patreon. We realize it's a challenging time and not everybody can do that right now. But if you have the means and you feel like you're getting value out of this, we would love it if you could back us there. It really helps us to continue to produce content like this. And we have really cool RECON swag, which is another great way that you can support Room Escape Artist and the team that put on the RECON event. We have masks, we have sweatshirts, we have lots of other fun stuff that you can purchase. You can go to the swag shop at realityescapecon.com/swag, and your purchase helps support this event, so we really appreciate that too.
And it looks good. We put so much into making it pretty for you.